I remember standing there frozen as Jessica's voice pierced through the air like a knife. Her words hit me harder than anything I had ever experienced in my life. She pointed her finger right at me, her face twisted in anger, telling me I was nothing but dead weight in her house. I stood in the middle of the living room surrounded by furniture I had once helped them pick out, wondering how it had come to this. She didn't stop. Her voice kept rising louder with every word like she wanted the whole neighborhood to hear. "You're done living here for free. Go find yourself a nursing home. We are not your caretakers." I felt my legs weaken, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I glanced at my son, Liam silently begging him to say something to defend me, but he just stood there, arms crossed, eyes on the floor, mouth sealed shut. His silence screamed louder than Jessica ever could. It was like watching a stranger. The boy I raised, the man I thought would always have my back, stood there, letting his wife tear me apart. Jessica kept going. "We are done feeding you. You contribute nothing here. You're just an extra mouth." I could hardly breathe. My hands trembled. My chest tightened. It felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. My throat burned, but not a sound escaped. I wanted to remind them of everything I had done, of every sacrifice, every moment I spent helping them, loving them, being there when they needed me most. But right then, none of that mattered. Jessica's eyes burned with resentment. Liam still wouldn't look at me. I felt like a ghost, like I didn't even exist. She waved her hands toward the front door. "You can pack your things. Be out by tonight. This isn't your home anymore." Her words hit me so hard I could feel something inside me crack. I don't even remember how long I stood there, staring at both of them, hoping, just hoping, that this was some terrible misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. All I could think was, how did it get to this? How did the people I love most become the ones who made me feel so small, so unwanted? I felt humiliated, completely stripped of my dignity. The weight of those words was unbearable, suffocating, like someone was pressing their hands around my throat. My eyes burned as tears welled up, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of them. Not like this. Jessica scoffed as if my silence meant guilt, like I had somehow wronged them just by existing. Liam shifted his weight from one foot to the other, but still said nothing. Not one word. Not even a glance of sympathy. The clock on the wall ticked louder than anything in that moment. I heard the faint hum of the fridge, the creak of the wooden floor beneath my feet, and Jessica's harsh breathing as she stood there, arms folded, waiting for me to move. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't let me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her how she could be so cruel. I wanted to ask my son how he could watch this happen without lifting a finger. But all I could do was stand there, holding back the flood of pain threatening to swallow me whole. In that moment, I realized something I never thought I would ever have to face. I wasn't welcome here anymore. The people I once called family had made that painfully clear. If someone had told me years ago that things would end up like this, I never would have believed them. I spent 35 years working as a nurse in Denver, caring for people at their worst moments, holding their hands through pain, loss, and fear. I always believed that family was the one thing that stood steady when everything else in life fell apart. After my husband passed away from cancer, the house felt too big and too empty. The silence became heavier than I could bear. So when Liam and Jessica suggested I move in with them, it felt like the perfect solution. It meant more time with my grandson, helping out with the household and being surrounded by family. I thought it was what any mother would want. I thought it was what they wanted too. In those first few weeks, everything felt warm and comforting. Jessica smiled often back then. She would ask for my help with cooking or watch shows with me in the evenings, while Liam worked late. My grandson would run into my arms after school, filling my day with laughter and little hugs that made my heart swell. It felt like I belonged, like we were a real family again. But slowly things began to change. The warmth faded little by little, so gradually I almost didn't notice it at first. Jessica's smiles became thinner. Her tone started carrying a sharpness that hadn't been there before. It wasn't what she said most of the time. It was how she said it. I'd offer to help with dinner, and she would wave me off with a tight smile. "No, I've got it." "It's fine." If I folded laundry, she would refold it when she thought I wasn't looking. If I tried to join in on a conversation about their weekend plans, the room would grow silent until someone changed the subject. It was like I was there, but not really meant to be part of anything that mattered. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe it was stress. But the cold stares when I walked into a room became too frequent to ignore. The way Jessica would lower her voice when I entered only to glance at me and whisper anyway, it stung more than I ever expected. I remember one morning sitting at the kitchen table sipping my coffee when I overheard Jessica talking on the phone. "I'm telling you, she's just extra hands around here. Free childcare, free cooking. That's all." She laughed like it was some harmless joke. But it didn't feel harmless. It felt like the floor had cracked beneath me. I started noticing how I was left out of family decisions. They bought a new car without mentioning it, made vacation plans, and never even asked if I wanted to come along. Jessica rearranged the house one afternoon while I was out moving my things into a corner of the garage without even telling me. I kept thinking this isn't what family is supposed to feel like. I didn't move here to be a burden. I came because I believed we were helping each other. I sold my house, gave up my little corner of the world thinking I would gain something even more valuable in return. A home filled with love, shared moments, and belonging. But day by day, that sense of belonging slipped away. It became clearer that in Jessica's eyes, I wasn't family. I was just something extra. Something unnecessary. Something in the way. It always starts with little things. Things so small, you convince yourself they don't matter. Jessica would walk into the living room, glance at the TV while I was watching my show, grab the remote, and change the channel without a word. Not even a glance in my direction, as if I was invisible, sitting right there on the couch. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she didn't notice. Maybe it was an accident. But it kept happening. Day after day. I'd be in the middle of a cooking show or a mystery I liked, and suddenly it was gone, replaced by her reality shows or loud crime dramas that I never cared for. I'd open my mouth to say something, but before the words left, she was already scrolling on her phone, ignoring me completely. It wasn't just the TV. Sometimes I'd ask her how her day went, and she'd respond with a dry, "Yeah, fine," while walking away, not bothering to even look at me. Other times, she wouldn't answer at all. Just silence, like my voice was background noise. Then there were the comments. Small, sharp, and always said like they weren't meant for me to hear. One afternoon, while she was on the phone with one of her friends, I heard her laugh and say she was basically running a free daycare. Said it like a joke, but the sting was real. I stood in the hallway, holding my grandson's laundry, feeling my face burn as her words sank in deeper than she could ever imagine. Liam was always just there, present, but not really. Every time something like this happened, I'd glance his way hoping he would step in, say something, anything. But he never did. He kept his eyes glued to his phone or stared at the floor, pretending not to notice. His silence was louder than any insult Jessica could throw. Even meals became uncomfortable. If I offered to set the table, Jessica would sigh, telling me she had it under control. If I tried to help fold laundry, she would refold everything the moment I stepped away. I started second-guessing every move I made. Was I actually helping, or was I just in the way? None of it was ever a full-blown argument. There was never screaming or slamming doors. Just tiny moments that stacked on top of each other until the weight became too much. Each dismissive glance, each ignored question, each sigh of annoyance. They added up like paper cuts in the same spot over and over until it didn't just hurt. It bled. There were nights I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, wondering how things shifted so quietly, so cruelly, without anyone ever raising their voice. I kept telling myself to be patient, that maybe tomorrow would be better. But deep down, the cracks were getting too deep to ignore. It happened on a Tuesday night. I remember because the smell of spaghetti was still in the air, mixed with garlic bread that I had pulled from the oven just an hour earlier. We were sitting at the dinner table, the clinking of silverware, the only sound between us, when suddenly Jessica slammed her plate down so hard the entire table rattled. Her eyes burned with a fury I hadn't seen before. She leaned forward, pointed straight at me, and her words sliced through the air like glass. "This isn't working anymore. Either you start paying rent, real rent, or you pack your things and leave." My fork slipped from my fingers, landing with a soft clang against my plate, but I hardly heard it. I turned to look at Liam, desperate for him to say something, anything that would stop this. But his eyes were glued to the spot just beyond the salt shaker hands, resting limp in his lap, his mouth pressed into a tight line. Not a word. Not even a glance in my direction. I could feel my heart pounding, my chest tightening like something was squeezing the life out of me. For a moment, I wondered if this was what it felt like to have a heart attack. I opened my mouth, but no words came. My lips trembled, my throat burned, but my voice betrayed me. Jessica crossed her arms, waiting. The silence was heavier than any screaming could have been. Her foot tapped against the tile, as if she was counting down the seconds before I responded. I could barely breathe. My hands gripped the edge of the chair, holding myself upright, because if I let go, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stand. I finally pushed my chair back. The screech of wood against tile echoed louder than anything else in that room. Without saying a word, I stood and walked toward my bedroom. My legs felt like they were made of sand. Every step felt heavier than the one before. Inside my room, I stared at the small dresser, the one drawer that held what little I called mine in this house. My hands trembled as I pulled it open. I grabbed whatever I could, shirts, socks, a sweater that still smelled faintly of the grandchild I used to hold every afternoon. I folded what I could, stuff the rest into an old suitcase that hadn't seen daylight in years. Each zip of the bag felt like another tear I couldn't let fall. I paused, once hands gripping the handle so tight my knuckles turned white, listening to the faint, muffled voices from the kitchen. But not once did Liam come to check on me. Not once did he knock on that door. It was in that moment I realized something that broke me even more than her words. I was no longer part of this family. Not in their eyes. Not in this house. Not anymore. What Liam and Jessica never knew was that I had a secret of my own. Months before this dinner, long before the yelling and the slammed plates, a friend of mine who worked in television reached out to me. He was producing a show called Behind Closed Doors, a reality series focused on exposing emotional abuse and mistreatment within families. At first, I brushed it off. I told him everything was fine, that it was just small misunderstandings. But deep down, a little voice whispered that things were not fine. That voice had been getting louder every time Jessica rolled her eyes or dismissed me like I was invisible. My friend explained how the show worked. They installed hidden cameras throughout the house with the consent of one family member. Only one. The purpose was to capture the truth of what happens behind closed doors when no one thinks they are being watched. I sat with that idea for a while, torn between feeling guilty and feeling desperate for anyone to see what was really happening to me. In the end, I agreed. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to humiliate anyone. I did it because I needed proof. Proof that I was not imagining things. That I wasn't being overly sensitive or dramatic. I needed the world to see what it felt like to be treated as less than human in the place you were supposed to call home. The cameras were tiny, hidden in places no one would ever think to check. One was tucked behind the bookshelf in the living room. Another disguised as a decorative clock in the kitchen. A third nestled between the plants on the windowsill, facing the dining table. There were microphones too hidden so cleverly that not even the most paranoid person would notice. Every sigh, every insult, every glance full of contempt. All of it was captured. They had no idea. No clue that while they were stripping me of my dignity piece by piece, the entire world would soon be watching. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel something shift inside me. Something that felt a lot like strength. I was dragging my suitcase down the driveway when I heard the unmistakable sound of tires crunching against gravel. I turned my head just as a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the house. The doors flew open, and out stepped the film crew cameras, already rolling microphones, pointed lights flashing brighter than the morning sun. Right behind them was Mark, the producer, walking with a folder in one hand and a face as serious as I had ever seen. Jessica was halfway to the door, probably ready to slam it behind me for good when she froze. Her mouth dropped open. Her eyes darted from the cameras to Mark, then back to me, like her brain couldn't catch up with what was happening. Mark walked straight up to her and handed her a stack of papers. His voice was calm, but carried enough weight to silence the entire neighborhood. Jessica, Liam, just so you are aware, this property has been under active filming for the past 3 months for a national television broadcast. The look on Jessica's face was pure horror. Her skin went pale like every drop of blood had drained from her body. Liam stepped forward, blinking like he wasn't sure this was real. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Jessica started shaking her head, mumbling no, no, no under her breath, as if that could undo what had already been done. Her hands flailed, trying to block the cameras, but there was nowhere to hide. Mark continued without flinching. All footage captured has been recorded under signed legal consent. He turned toward me, gave me the smallest nod, then shifted back to them. Your treatment of Eleanor has been documented. It will be aired nationwide next week. Jessica let out a scream that didn't even sound human, a sound of panic, fear, and absolute disbelief. Liam stumbled back, rubbing his hands over his face like he could somehow erase the cameras by pretending they weren't there. But it was too late. The truth was already out. The whole world was about to see exactly who they were behind closed doors. The episode aired on a Thursday night. I sat in my little apartment with a cup of tea, watching as my own life unfolded on national television. Within minutes of the show, the internet exploded like wildfire. Clips of Jessica calling me dead weight and telling me to find a nursing home started circulating everywhere. People reposted the footage on every platform you could imagine. Comment sections filled with outrage faster than anyone could read them. Thousands of voices demanding answers, demanding justice. How could anyone treat their own mother-in-law like this? Jessica's name trended within an hour, followed by her company's name. By the next morning, her employer released a public statement. Effective immediately, Jessica had been terminated for violating core workplace values related to integrity and respect. People flooded her company's reviews with 1-star ratings, calling them out for ever hiring someone like her in the first place. It didn't stop there. Liam's workplace caught wind of everything too. Colleagues distanced themselves. He showed up to work only to find whispers in every corner and group chats that had suddenly removed his name. No one wanted to be seen supporting someone like him. His own friends turned silent, embarrassed just to know him. Meanwhile, my inbox looked completely different. Hundreds of messages poured in. Total strangers wrote things like "You didn't deserve this," and "You are stronger than anyone I know." Some offered help. Others simply sent words of kindness. I even got letters mailed to me from people across the country who watched the show and felt the need to remind me that I mattered. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 2 straight days. Reporters reached out. Talk shows wanted to feature my story. Comment sections overflowed with love and support for me, mixed with pure disbelief at Jessica's behavior. The internet had decided exactly whose side it was on. The world saw the truth. And there was no going back. Life looks very different now, but in the best possible way. I moved into a small apartment just a few blocks from a park filled with walking trails, fresh air, and the sound of children laughing in the afternoons. The space is mine, truly mine, quiet and peaceful, with sunlight pouring through the windows every morning. After the show aired, invitations started coming in. Talk shows wanted me to share my story, not for the drama, but to start a real conversation about how we treat the elderly in our own families. I became part of a campaign called Respect Seniors, helping raise awareness and reminding people that aging does not make someone disposable. The kindness I received from total strangers still amazes me. Neighbors I had never spoken to before dropped by with flowers and homemade pies. People in the grocery store would stop, smile, and tell me how much my story meant to them. It felt like the world had wrapped me in a warm hug, reminding me that I was never truly invisible. Liam tried calling, more than once. He left voicemails, sent texts, even showed up at my old doorstep hoping to talk. But I never answered. Not because I hate him, not because I want revenge, but because peace means protecting myself from reopening wounds that are finally starting to heal. For the first time in a long time, my days feel light. I wake up, make my coffee, and sit by the window, watching the world move around me without that heavy knot of sadness in my chest. I planted flowers on my little balcony. I joined a book club. I started laughing again, not because I had to, but because I truly wanted to. I realized something powerful through all of this. Sometimes healing starts the moment you stop waiting for someone else to change. The moment you decide your worth isn't tied to whether someone accepts you or not. I chose me. I chose peace. And I am never going back. If you are sitting there listening to this, and you have ever felt like you were a burden, like you were invisible or unwanted, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not disposable. You are not worthless. Someone else's failure to see your value does not make you any less valuable. Being treated like an inconvenience says everything about the person doing the hurting and nothing about you. Their inability to show love or respect is a reflection of their own shortcomings, not yours. You are not defined by their cruelty, their silence, or their rejection. I spent too many nights wondering what I had done wrong, wondering how I could be someone's mother, someone's family, and still be treated like I was nothing more than extra weight. But what I learned is that no matter how much love you give, you cannot force someone to treat you right. You cannot beg someone to see your worth if they refuse to open their eyes. But here's the truth. Life does not end just because someone tries to push you out of theirs. It does not end when someone slams a door or when people you thought would stand by you turn their backs. It hurts. It breaks you for a while. But it does not end. In fact, sometimes it is where something new begins. I have learned that healing is not about waiting for an apology that may never come. Healing is choosing to stop waiting. choosing to stop handing the keys to your happiness to people who never deserved them in the first place. You get to choose your peace. You get to choose your joy. And no one has the right to take that from you. If you are breathing, it is not too late to start over. Not too late to build a life filled with laughter, purpose, and love, even if that love has to come from new people or from within yourself. I promise you, there are still people in this world who will see you, who will value you, who will remind you every day that you are enough. For anyone who has ever been made to feel small, hear me when I say this. You matter. Your story matters. Your existence is not a mistake or a burden. The fact that you are still here, still standing, still breathing, is proof of how strong you really are. Never let someone's mistreatment become the lens you see yourself through. Hold your head high. Set boundaries. Protect your peace like it is the most precious thing you own, because it is. And remember, you are allowed to outgrow people who refuse to grow. You are allowed to choose yourself. I hope my story reminds you that no matter how dark it feels, there is always a way forward. There's always another chapter waiting to be written. And that chapter can be filled with light laughter and new beginnings if you are brave enough to turn the page. So if this story resonated with you, if it touched something deep inside, share it. Share it not just for me, but for everyone out there who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or unloved. Share it as a reminder that respect should never be optional. It should be unconditional.